Bases dropped on a new edition of Soccer Down Here. It's a Thursday. It's June 25th. You guys have questions about the MLS is Back tournament, about the NWSL Challenge Cup, about the FIFA Congress that is going on right now with voting around who's going to host the 2023 Women's World Cup and trying to figure out what the international calendar looks like in the meantime. That's going on as we speak. We'll keep you updated on anything that comes out of it. All kinds of stuff going on. Liverpool's one step closer to a Premier League title. Real Madrid with a big win yesterday. All kinds of stuff to talk about. Italy's chaos. So you want to get in the conversation, tweet at us at SoccerDownHere. Send us an email, soccerdownhere@gmail.com. Or you can join us on twitch.tv/SoccerDownHere and let us know what you're thinking this morning. John says he has a question of the day, and I'm scared.
Well, isn't that normally the case? That's old news.
Well, no, I'm not normally scared. I mean,
with a question of the day that I bring up,
maybe.
I was going to say, be honest.
Maybe. What is it?
Well, okay, so the grid came out yesterday. Schedule comes out for MLS is Back. We know who's playing when, what times of day, and all that kind of stuff. Has your perception, you're in the collective, anybody listening, watching, what have you, has your thought changed on how your team or how a particular team that is not your team, has that perception changed now that the schedule's out? Because you now know the order of who's playing when, time of day, day parts, those kinds of things. So that was basically what was running through my brain. It's like we all had, when the brackets came out, we're sitting there going, well, so-and-so's in this bracket, and I think that this will work here, and I think that they'll win. They'll finish second. They won't make it in. Now that the grid is out and we know who's playing when, what times of day, has anything changed, or are you still locked into your ideas as to who do you think is going to advance?
Why would it change?
Time of day, turnaround time, those kinds of things. Like I look at Nashville, and out of the blocks, Nashville gets Chicago. I think that what that does for Nashville is give them a good first match to get them full points, to get them that much closer to getting out of group. Though Are
you remembering Chicago that we saw at the beginning of the season?
No.
Yeah, you might want to go back and look at Chicago. They were pretty impressive. They took Seattle to the wire out in Seattle. So it's not your old Chicago Fire. I don't think that's an easy win for Nashville by any stretch.
But I think that it gives, if Nashville can get the win there, I think it gives them that, shot in the door immediately with a 10:30 game coming out of the blocks. I think that first match gives them a chance to get out of their group.
I don't know if the timing in that case. I don't think it does anything straight out of the gate. I don't think it affects it. It's later in the tournament is where I'm looking at turnaround times, and the one from an Atlanta United perspective that you have to look at is where they play the 9 a.m. game on Thursday, July 16th against Cincinnati. The opponents for both of those teams play at 10:30 that night.
Right.
And then they have to turn around and play. Columbus is going to play on shorter rest than Atlanta will because they play the night game that night. They turn around, they play again on the Tuesday at 8 o'clock. So Atlanta gets 12-plus hours of rest. Is that going to make a huge difference? Huge, no. But could it be one of those little things that gives you a little more freshness in that game on the Tuesday? It could. I mean, you're talking Thursday to Tuesday. That's a pretty good amount of rest. Columbus should be okay, but this whole year is weird, and we don't know where they're going to come in fitness-wise. So I look at things like that. I don't look at the first game really giving you any leg up. You mentioned Nashville. So Nashville gets Chicago in the late game on day one. Then Nashville's next one is Philly at 8 o'clock on Tuesday. So they get a pretty good amount of time to recover. And then you are Orlando at 9 a.m. On a Monday, July 20th. I mean, you get the hardest game in the middle. If you're looking for something to hang your hat on, yeah, I guess. But Chicago and Orlando aren't easy for Nashville. I mean, that's the thing. Nashville's not Atlanta. Nashville's not Philly or New York City. Nashville's not a favorite here. So Nashville, they get 2 games that are winnable and one that's going to be really difficult for them, but they're not a favorite in anything. They're not a favorite over Orlando. They're not a favorite over Chicago. I think Chicago's a team that can get out of the group. Somebody else is going to get out of that group, and I think Chicago can do it. I think Chicago surprised me in those early games this season. I want to go back and look at them again, but just the fact that they gave Seattle all they could handle. This Chicago team, you give Raphael Vicky more time now to build it, and you're able to, the question is, where are they going to be coming in? Mm-hmm. And Chicago's been one of the bigger mysteries because they haven't been able to train as much. So we don't know what is going on with the Fire in that realm. But what we saw in the first 2 weeks of the season, they were looking like a very improved team. And I don't know. I don't think Nashville's going to have anything easy. I don't think the schedule helps them. I don't think it hurts them. I don't think there's anything really bad about it. I mean, I want to look back and see when Orlando plays in that game before. Orlando plays 2 hours later, so it's not like they're getting Orlando on an extra day of lack of rest or anything like that. So, yeah, the schedule doesn't really do anything for them. The ones that jumped out to me, I look at the Seattle-Dallas game as a 9 a.m. game. That's going to be a weird one for both of those teams.
Yeah.
How do they handle that? I mean, you can do all the getting used to the time and all that you want, but Seattle playing at 9 a.m. You play at 9 a.m., it's weird to begin with. You play at 6 a.m. in your body clock, even if you've been there for a couple of weeks. Oof. That's going to be awkward. I like the 9 o'clock games in general. I think they're going to be very interesting to see what ESPN does with them. I like that their first one out of the gate is a big game in New York City and Philadelphia. That should be a really good match. I like that they put Atlanta in one. I think that's a good thing. I'm sure they wanted to get a Western Conference team or two in there, and they get Seattle in there. We'll just see how much it affects the match. Those are going to be intriguing. The 10:30 games. I mean, Atlanta plays at 8 o'clock on Fox, which is a big deal on the Saturday night, but then Hell is Real at 10:30 afterwards on FS1. That's going to be a little weird for those two teams to play that late. So those are the in terms of timing and the things we learned yesterday, those are the things I'm looking at. How does Atlanta handle a 9 a.m. game? How does Seattle handle a 9 a.m. game? How does Columbus handle playing the 10:30 game on the same day Atlanta plays the 9 o'clock game, and then they turn around and play on the last day? For me, nothing's changed in terms of the teams that I think are favored to get out of group or not. I don't think this changes it, but it does bring some questions to the table.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah, the West Coast teams playing East Coast and having everything switch in your biological clocks. Tafka's calling his shot on Miami to advance.
They could. I mean, Group A, honestly, it's wide open after New York City and Philadelphia to me. And that's why I think Chicago's got a shot. Miami could. If they get LGP and you don't know where he's going to come in like. Is he going to be able to really help you in this tournament? Is he fit? In Mexico, they haven't come back to training. He wasn't training with Tijuana. So, is he even going to be able to contribute in this event? Do you have enough without him? Yeah, you do. Miami was another team that we just didn't really know what they were yet. Pizarro is one of the most talented players in the league. If they get Julian Carranza back, then you've got a guy who can put goals in the back of the net for you up top. I think Pellegrini having some more time to adjust will be a good thing for them. They've got some MLS veterans who know the league that will help them in an event like this. I don't think it's a lock that they go through. I really don't know who the third team is in Group A. I think it's a total wild card because, New York City and Philadelphia are your obvious ones. But Orlando, they're going to be better this year. Oscar Pareja, I think, has built a pretty good team. They need work, but you're going to get a little more work now than you would have before. Miami, same thing. They're new. Nashville, new. They need as much time as possible to train to see what they can be. Out of Chicago, Nashville, Miami, Orlando, you could argue any of them are the number 3 team. And now that number 3 team gets the automatic slot to go through, and team number 4 could go through as one of the next highest ranked teams, it's going to open the door up to at least 1, maybe 2 kind of wild cards out of that group.
You look at Miami, they've got breakfast with the Chicago Fire on the 14th. And what is it this morning?
Coke Energy.
There we go. Breakfast with Chicago Fire on the 14th. Then they turn around and end up with Philadelphia late night on the 19th. And then their last one in group stage, as I continue to scroll down, and I'm scrolling past it naturally.
Good job.
Yeah, that's what I'm here for.
Mm-hmm.
So you got Inter Miami on the 19th, and what's the one that I'm missing? I've got the 14th with Chicago. I think I scrolled too far initially. So, yeah, so that's where we are. Yeah, we're getting there. Oh, Orlando. 8 o'clock Orlando, the first match in the 8th. So there you go. Yeah. I go to the second game thinking that's the first game, and the first game is really the first game. So that's where we are. So that's what. So Tafka has Miami advancing as a lock. Carl Badgett with a question this morning. Any word on how yellow card will work in the group stage with MLS's back or yellow card accumulation?
Oh, that's a good question, and I have not checked that. Thank you, Carl. Let's see if they have posted that kind of stuff. I'm looking for general competition rules, disciplinary procedures. Here we go. All discipline received from the first 2 matches of the 2020 regular season will carry over. All group stage discipline will be reset before the start of the knockout stage because it's separate. Red cards or second yellows. If somebody gets a red or 2 yellows in the last group stage game, they will miss out on the first knockout game. No yellow card accumulation policy for the knockout stage. So it's basically like regular season is what you're thinking. You've got 2 games on the board. So we'll double check and see where everybody is in yellow cards here in a second. Pull that up if you can while I'm going through this, John. Yellow cards for Atlanta United. So group stage discipline that hasn't been served prior to the end of the group stage will be applied to the next regular season match after this. Player receives second yellow card in the final group stage match, but the first yellow card was also his 5th yellow card for the regular season. Player will be suspended for the first knockout stage competition match due to the red card suspension and for yellow card accumulation for his first regular season game after the tournament. That's an interesting one. Red cards, disciplinary committee action, and final knockout stage match would carry over to the regular season after. So the accumulation, there's nothing special for the group stage. It's regular season accumulation, which is 5. And you've played 2 games. So that's going to be game 5 at the end of this. If you picked up 2 yellows in that, you're going to have in any game, to get there, you're going to have a suspension. So there won't be any yellow card accumulation suspensions. That can't happen in this. The only time it could happen is if you are very special and you've picked up a yellow card in every game you play, and then you would be suspended for the first regular season game after the tournament. You would not be... I'm going to double check this. Yeah, I think so. You would not be suspended for the knockout game because that's not technically a regular season game. So that wouldn't count for your accumulation. Your accumulation would count after the tournament. So you can't pick up, I don't think, unless somebody got 2 yellows and got a red card at some point in the first 2 games, maybe they could pick up a 5th yellow and be suspended. But I don't think that happened in the first 2 games anywhere, not just Atlanta United.
Only yellow cards on the book so far are Hasechu and Remedi.
Yeah, and it's just one. So, I mean, it's nobody's in risk of that at this point. It's a little weird because you've got these games doubling as regular season, so you're not creating like a tournament format for yellow card accumulation. It's not 2 yellows and you're suspended for the next game. It's regular season type of accumulation. That's a little complicated, but that's what they have down here on their disciplinary procedures.
Joe Johnstone this morning was looking for a basic overview of the tournament.
In what way?
He just said is like now that everything's said. If I was a first time listener, I'd love an overview of the MLS's back tournament.
I mean, it's like a World Cup. If you're brand new to this, it's essentially a World Cup with, instead of 24 teams in even groups, it's 26. So one group is a little strange, but you're thinking about an older World Cup kind of format with 24 teams and 16 go to the knockout round. The thing that makes it a little interesting is that every game's a regular season game. So where you would previously in a World Cup, you'd see teams eliminated after their first 2 games. Game 3 doesn't mean anything. They're just throwing kids out or whatever, giving everybody a chance to play. Well, you're not going to do that here because you're going to have a shorter regular season to begin with. And every game's going to mean something in terms of getting into the playoffs at the end of the regular season. So those last games will have more meaning than they normally would. I think the favorites in this are the favorites in general in this competition. I mean, you look at the teams from last season that were the teams to watch, and you had Seattle win the title last year. They have to be a team you're keeping an eye on. Toronto won the Eastern Conference, made the final. They have to be a team you're keeping an eye on. Josie Altidore should be healthy. That's going to help them. Atlanta and LAFC, where you're losing conference finalists, both teams that are still teams you have to worry about this year. In addition to them, Sporting Kansas City, for me, is a big deal because I think they had a bunch of injuries last year, had a lot of bad luck. They've added a goal scorer in Alan Polito. They're a team that is a favorite in this season to begin with, and I think they're a favorite in a tournament like this because of Peter Vermes. Portland, I think, is a team that can do even better in a format like this because Giovanni Savarese is pragmatic. He'll do whatever it takes to advance, and I think Portland might be the team that drives you crazy in this because they're going to be focused on winning and advancing as opposed to pretty soccer. But they've got players like Blanco and Valeri who can deliver in big moments that beautiful soccer. But they're gonna be defense first. They're gonna try to grind you down a little bit. The Galaxy with Chicharito, that's one that we keep kind of wondering what they're gonna be. Don't know if we really have any answers yet. New York City and Philadelphia are right there in the East. I think you come into this. I mean, I thought coming into the season there were about 8-9 teams that had a shot to win MLS Cup. I think coming into something like this, it's about the same. It's a wide open event. Your big questions remaining are there any injuries that are going to keep players out of it? And we haven't heard of anything major yet. Will Bruin picked up a tibia injury. He's out 4 to 6 weeks for Seattle. He's not a critical player for them. It's going to hurt them, but they can find a way through. Or are you going to have any players who can't participate due to health or due to a situation like Carlos Vela, where his wife is expecting? Haven't heard any updates on that yet. So the teams coming in my opinion, are the same teams that I thought were going to be good this year. Those are the teams to watch. But we still have some unanswered questions, and we'll have to see how those go. But I think it's going to be a fun tournament that's going to be different than some of the other leagues in their return to play, because I think the games are going to have a little more riding on them because of it being a tournament format, but it's still regular season. And then once you get into the knockouts, I think it's going to be a blast. It's going to be intense. It's going to be competitive. I think this is the best MLS could do with the situation.
Yeah, Peter Vermes on Extra Time mentioned Dallas, Miami, Orlando, Atlanta, and Houston as favorites.
Wow, that's some wild cards out of Peter Vermes. I wonder if calculated there.
Well,
Houston being a favorite.
Well, I think that what he was getting into was the weather aspect of it. With all these...
Okay, so he's not saying they're necessarily favorites. He's saying they're going to have an advantage because of the weather. That's a very different conversation.
Yeah. So weather.
Seattle's not a non-favorite because they come from the Pacific
You
Northwest.
play in cold weather, therefore.
Yeah. So no, that's not the case. The favorites, yeah. I mean, you play in warmer weather, you train in warmer weather. Okay. Hasn't really been all that warm here in Atlanta, not compared to Central Florida. So I don't know how much of an advantage Atlanta's going to have. I haven't been keeping up with the weather out in Texas or out in California or South Florida. So in Miami and Orlando, yeah, you're closer to home. It should be pretty normal for you. Others, we'll see. But I don't know how much of a difference that's going to make overall. Could it help in that third game? Yeah, it could. It could be the difference. Orlando-Nashville, for example, in that third game. Orlando's going to be a little more comfortable playing, near home and used to the weather, and even used to that's probably about when they train anyway at 9 a.m. So that'll be pretty typical for them. Might be a little different for Nashville.
And Tafka on the Heron train, he's going to call his shot again and say they're going to get the group runner-up spot.
Over who? That's the question for me. I mean, NYC and Philadelphia, I think, are the obvious top two there. But that's the thing about this kind of format. I mean, you go in every World Cup and you have favorites and you pick it out and you go scratch and you go chalk and you're like, it's going to be the best two teams are going to be the best two teams. And somebody slips up. Somebody starts slow. Somebody has a bad day at the office and they don't get through. Somebody has one of those games where you have 20 shots and you hit the post 5 times and you can't find a way to score a goal. The other team has 2 shots and they beat you. That can happen, but on paper, New York City and Philadelphia are the best two teams in that group, and it's not even that close. Your questions about both are – there's not a lot of questions about Philadelphia. Shabilko's just health and mentality would be the main one because he's so critical to that team. New York City, it's Ronnie Dyla's first year. I mean, on paper, they brought everybody back. They were a really good team, but you have a new manager. How is he going to handle this situation with guys that he doesn't have a ton of history with? That's a worthy question, but those two teams are really strong. I don't think Miami's as strong of a team. I don't think Orlando, Nashville, Chicago are as strong of a team. And it doesn't happen universally in a World Cup because we see talented teams go out in the group stage. But generally, talent wins out. And I think there's a big talent gap in that group between New York City and Philadelphia and the rest.
Katie Weaver, we were discussing weather in Central Florida and all this kind of stuff. Katie Weaver's got a really good question.
Okay.
How will weather delays work? Evening games slide to the next time slot, and they have to play 2 simultaneously. And how late can they legally play at the facility?
I have no idea about the local curfew. Could be a little bit different right now. It's a private facility, and you're not worried about fans and egress and traffic or anything like that. So I don't know if there's any kind of a stopping point for the end of the night. I think everything just backs up. The only hard thing about it, because I'm not 100% sure here, but I'm assuming that all of the games are going to be played on their stadium field there. I mean, you're not playing multiple games at the same time. That's going to be your field that's going to look the best for TV. You're investing more on the TV side. You're not going to be able to invest more on a bunch of fields across the complex. You're going to put it into one field and make it into an outdoor studio, essentially. So, your morning game getting backed up, it gets backed up. That's not a big deal. You just finish it when you finish it. The evening games, I think everything just pushes back. And if you've already got some that are more likely going to be like 11:15 to 11:30 starts anyway. So, and that's the other thing is it looks like the kickoff times are actually going to be about 30 minutes or so past the broadcast time. Which again is what TV does. It's what they need to do. It's gonna be good for the league as a whole. It's annoying for us who see the time and we're like, all right, it's gonna kick off at 9 or just after 9. No, it's not. It's gonna be later. But they're gonna have a pregame show, and that's good. Just go ahead and announce the kickoff time at 9:30 as opposed to 9, and go ahead and announce the kickoff time as 11 instead of 10:30 at night. Stuff like that.
Yes.
But yeah, I'm assuming things will just get backed up for the night games, and I wouldn't think a curfew would come into play. I wouldn't expect it to.
Yeah, because if you're on a private facility and you're not impacting anything going on around you with floodlights and activity and all that kind of stuff, then for me it would be just, you're going to do your thing, and you start when you start, you finish when you finish, and since you're on a private facility, then that's what it is.
The good thing is most of your daily thunderstorms that come through are in that 3-4 o'clock in the afternoon range. Been down there for multiple games, and it feels like, in the summer it'll rain at that time. I don't think we had a game pushed back. I think warm-ups might have been pushed back just a little bit or something, but I don't think we had a kickoff much later than it was supposed to be in Orlando. It's just typical. So I think that's why they're looking at a lot of 8 o'clock games or 8 o'clock kicks or even 8:30 kicks, because they're trying to miss that.
Right. Tafka is wondering if it's just one field, and can a single field handle 54 matches in a month? He was thinking 2 showcase fields minimum.
It could be, and I don't know that layout, so I'm not speaking the gospel there. It could be 2 showcase fields, and if that's the case, then it's even easier to deal with that night schedule of 2 games back to back. A single field can, especially something like this, because this is not just a random field out in a random place. This is incredibly well maintained and built for things like this. You're going to have to do a lot of work, and if you have 2 fields, and I don't know the facility because I've never been, if you have 2 fields that give you a stadium type of component for the look, even better. You can rotate. Field can rest, you can play on the other field that day, things like that. So I don't know for sure, and I haven't seen that really talked about. So we'll have to see what that looks like.
Chris Hutchison with a programming question on our end.
Okay.
Will there be SDH watch-alongs for the early morning games? I think you'll be kind of busy.
Well, no. I mean, I'm not going to be kind of busy. I'm calling one game. There's one morning game I'm calling. I don't know what we're going to do yet, because we've got there's a couple days where there's NWSL and MLS all day long for the most part. So I'm figuring the schedule out. Wednesdays are also going to be tricky, where there's a morning game, and then we've got afternoon stuff with radio. So I don't know what SDH is going to look like just yet. Stay tuned. We'll figure it out as we go. Make sure you're subscribed to the Twitch channel, because when we do watch-along type of stuff like that, we're not going to do a podcast edition of a watch-along. It's just going to be, hey, join us on Twitch and watch the game. We'll be watching it and talking about it as it's on. But where we do stuff like that, it's going to be on Twitch. Where we do preview or recap stuff especially, because that will last a little bit. Previews probably will be Twitch as well, because there's no point in listening to a preview later as a podcast for a game that just happened.
Yeah.
So the recaps will be normal on the app, on the website. You can download and listen to the podcast later. The watch-alongs, the previews will be on Twitch. So twitch.tv/soccer down here. Make sure you're following and make sure you're getting notifications when we're going to do it. And we'll give you some advance warning. I'm still waiting on USL. That's the thing that I'm waiting on, to see what their schedule is going to look like, so I can have my calendar completely filled up and figure out what things look like. So stay tuned. We'll have our scheduling here coming up, but we're getting a bunch of questions on Twitch too. Are we live watching all the 9 o'clock games? I don't know what we're doing yet. Yeah. Stay tuned. Chris Ashley, settle down.
Jeff Plucker says, we better win our group. Second place gets the Group F winner, and the best third place gets the other winners.
Yeah, that's where it gets tricky, is where you start looking at who you could be facing later. So let's go through that. Atlanta United, Group E, get to know it, so we kind of know where we're talking about here. Round of 16, when you look at where you can slide into, E1 would be playing July 28th, 8 o'clock on ESPN. You'd be playing D2, which could be one of RSL, Sporting Kansas City, Colorado, Minnesota. The whole idea that they were going to keep this geographic in the knockout round has been thrown to the wayside. So if I'm calling it right now, Minnesota. I think Sporting wins the group. I think Minnesota's next, but man, it could be RSL or Colorado, or one of them could bump Kansas City into that game.
Yep.
That's not fun. Okay, if you're second in the group, you play F1. LAFC, LA Galaxy, Houston, or Portland. That's not fun either. If you are the third place team and you escape, you would be in one of two games. You would be July 25th at 8 o'clock playing A1, which would be New York City or Philadelphia, more than likely, but it could be Miami, Orlando, Chicago, or Nashville. That might be better. D1 is your other possibility, and that would be the winner of the RSL Kansas City, Colorado, Minnesota group. None of it's good. None of it's good. You just don't know who's going to come out as D2. You know, on paper, of course, that's the one you want. You want to win the group. You want to have as good of a record going into the rest of the regular season as possible. If Kansas City gets, upset somewhere, has a draw somewhere, and slides into second in that group, man, I don't want that either. But if it's a choice between Kansas City or LAFC,
yay!
Yeah, that's what this knockout stage is going to look like.
Uh-huh.
I mean, that's what's fun about it, is you're going to get some wild matchups here. You could have, just looking at some of the possible matchups, you could have Seattle win Group B, and they could play the third place team in Group A, which could be Miami, according to Tafka. Could be a New York City or a Philadelphia if they slip. Okay, that could be interesting. You've got that F1 E2 matchup July 28th, the 10:30 game, which could be LAFC Atlanta. It could be, Atlanta and Portland. It could be the LA Galaxy and Columbus. It could be LAFC and Red Bulls. I mean, that's a high-profile one. That could be a big one. You've also got, because of the way these go when you have third-place teams coming in, you've got second-place teams that will be matched up against one another no matter what. And sometimes that can create a decent road. I mean, you could get Dallas or San Jose as the second-place team in Group B facing the second-place team in Group F, which could be the Galaxy or Portland. Either one of those, I like the matchups. A2 and C2 are matched up as well. So New York City or Philly against probably New England or Toronto, maybe DC. Okay. There's some interesting, juicy matchups that could present themselves in the knockout round. I don't think there's going to be many bad matchups in the knockout round.
No, I don't think so. That's but once again, like if you look at this like a World Cup format, you're going to get those juicy matchups when you're getting into the knockout stage. So it's going to be the fun part of all of this. But if you take care of your business in your little section, then you've got I was going to say you've got an advantage, but since it's neutral site, but no, it's going to be a hell of a round of matchups when you get to the knockout stage.
Yeah, it's going to get really, really interesting. So on Twitch, Joe Johnstone is with me on Chicago. He said Beric looked really good up top. I thought they outplayed Seattle in that match. I remember watching that one. I'm going to go back and watch more of Chicago. I went back and watched Red Bulls and RSL last night, and man, the Red Bulls got played off the park. Gave up like 21 shots, had 2 cleared off the line. They got a goal early, a really good goal from Christian Caceres, but RSL just could not buy a goal. They eventually got one late and got a 1-1 draw. But Red Bulls are not the Red Bulls that we know. And this is what I'm really fascinated about in this tournament for them. And it's going to affect Atlanta. It's going to affect Columbus and Cincinnati as well. Red Bulls are shifting to a 4-2-2-2 formation. They've played with that almost every year under Jesse Marsch to start, and then they got away from it. The personnel's different now, though. You don't have a Bradley Wright Phillips that didn't really work as well in a two-man pairing up top. You've got a team that you can mold a little bit differently because you're talking about Brian White, you're talking about Tom Barlow, you're talking about Matthias Jorgensen. The question is, that's a system that I think needs a lot of work. And are you going to be ready to roll that out? Also, the other thing Chris Armas was working on early, and he talked about it in some of his preseason comments, they're trying to not just be a 200 miles an hour pressing team all game, nonstop, all season, no problem. Look, you can do that if you're Red Bull Salzburg. You can do that if you're RB Leipzig. You're playing in Austria and Germany. You're not playing in the American summer. You're not playing in Central Florida in 3 games in 10, 12 days. That's rough. So they were already starting to look at, well, how can we keep our identity but not be that team all the time? And that RSL game was interesting because it's game 2 of the season. You're on the road. You're at a little bit of altitude in Utah. And you started out, if you go back and look at it, the first 5, 10, 15 minutes, high intensity, a lot of pressure everywhere. By about the middle of the first half, they had dropped off, and their line of confrontation was about 10 yards inside RSL's half. They were dropping deeper. That's not what we're used to seeing out of Red Bulls. So now you had that game. You were just under siege, but you got a result. And now you come into something like this after a long break. Has Chris Armas changed his approach? Is the season plan still the same? Is it, look, we need to be more diverse. We need to be able to do different things, especially in a format like this, because we can't run all day, every day, 3 games in Central Florida, then knockout games. We've got to find times to rest in games. Is he going to pick his spots to do this? And that's what's going to be interesting. Cincinnati, they're going to get them in the 3rd game. Okay, that would be the game that you look at on paper and you would say that's our most likely win. But how are you going to beat Cincinnati if you're the Red Bulls? Can you beat them straight up and not be press everywhere and run yourself into the ground? I don't know. I don't know if this Red Bulls team is that good to do that. I think the pressing gives them their element of surprise. So you got to keep some fresh legs for that one that you think is going to be your most likely win. Your other 2, you're facing 2 teams that are different. Atlanta wants a lot of possession. You generally want to disrupt that. Can you in game 1 in Florida? Maybe. You have to see how your training's going. Columbus likes to be somewhere in between. They're a team that values possession. When you have a Darlington Nagbe, you're going to value possession. When you have a Lucas De La Rayon, you're going to value possession. But Caleb Porter has also been somebody who has no problem being vertical when he needs to be. And you've got guys who can get vertical for you. Luis Diaz with his speed out wide. Jossie Zardes, one of the best forwards in this league. I think it's a tough draw for the Red Bulls because of the way the games line up and also who you're playing, because you're facing 3 very different kinds of teams. Cincinnati wants to play closer to the way Atlanta wants to play. I don't think they're close to it yet, but that's the mentality. They want the ball. They want to cherish the ball. They want to work with the ball. Red Bulls, I'm fascinated to see what their approach is because they're trying to turn into something different. At least that's what Chris Armas has been saying, and that's what they looked like in Utah in week 2. Can they be ready for that in a tournament like this? Where is their level of training been? And I've said it about every league in the world. What I think is going to show in all of these leagues coming back, in this tournament and everything, is the best managers are going to stand out. Their teams are going to stand out because they're going to make the most of the individual training time, but they're going to make the most of the limited time on training. You know, it's not a normal setup. Quality will come to the fore. Chris Armas, there's questions. And, you know, maybe some of them are a little unfair because of the job he stepped into. But, yeah, there's questions. How is he going to handle this? And is he going to be able to weather the storm here with this and be able to have different tactical plans? Is he going to be able to really make this team over? You've got no Kamar Lawrence. You've got no Luis Robles. You've got no Michael Murillo. So you're losing your goalkeeper, your two outside backs on the back line. You're playing a 4-2-2-2. You've got Sean Davis, who's a very good holding midfielder. You're trying to find a spot for Daniel Royer, who I think is better out wide, but if he's going to play as a second forward in a very free role, okay. You're trying to find a spot for Kaku, who is a great playmaker, but was wildly inconsistent last year. Okay, does the 4-2-2-2 work for him? Does it turn into more of a 4-4-2? Does it turn into, with Royer's movement, honestly more of a 4-2-3-1, which is where they've generally been, with Brian White or Tom Barlow up top, with Royer drifting out to one side, and with Kaku centrally. You know, they're a team that 4-2-2-2, they are trying to make the game as narrow as possible. For a team like Atlanta, you look at that and you look at, you know, in that game against RSL, Patrick Segrist was your left back, and he really struggled. You've got some other options there, but we hadn't seen them yet. They made some signings really late in the offseason, so we'll see what their lineup looks like. But if they want to be narrow, if you're facing that, you want to stretch them out. And in a 3-4-3 like we've seen Atlanta play, Brooks Lennon running down the right side can give a Patrick Segrist a lot of problems. And on the left side, George Bello opening the game up. He can give Kyle Duncan a lot of problems. Duncan can get forward and hurt you. A goal and 2 assists in the first 2 games. But defensively, he's a little wild, a little aggressive. You can catch him out. You can get him caught. The Red Bulls are a tough matchup because of what we think they are. I don't know if they are that anymore. So this is a huge tournament for Chris Armas and for the New York Red Bulls. It's a tough spot for him, but I want to see if they can show more than just what they've been, because that's what they've said they want to do. I don't know if they have the team to do it. I don't think they have enough talent to do it. I don't know if they're going to be the third team in this group. Cincinnati could surprise you. I don't think they are at the same level as Atlanta and Columbus.
And that was going to be my question where Red Bulls were concerned, because with who we've seen who they are, for a complex compound thought, for who we know what we've seen in Red Bulls in this format with the players that you don't have anymore, trying to bring in players from within the system to take over those places where you don't have the names that you talked about, no Kamara, no Murillo, no Robles. That, for me, it's you're looking at, okay, how quickly can you get to full song and be adjusted under normal circumstances when you're playing in Major League Soccer. Now you have this format, you've got a season start, but then you have this big gap, now you have this tournament, and the Red Bulls trying to be something that they haven't been in addition to who they are. It just seems to me very schizophrenic when you're coming into a tournament where you have teams who have identities, not as many holes, and an idea of what they want to accomplish, and Red Bulls seem to be just kind of scattershot or just all over the place philosophically.
No, they're not all over the place philosophically. That's not fair. They have a plan in mind. They understand that the way they played in the past doesn't necessarily work because you don't have Bradley Wright Phillips, you don't have Sasha Kljestan, who had 3 of the best seasons you could have as a playmaker in this league in history. You don't have those guys anymore. You don't have Dax McCarty anymore. You don't have Tyler Adams anymore. You don't have Luis Robles in goal. You don't have 2 of the best outside backs in the league anymore. You don't have those guys. I mean, you could put together a really good team of former Red Bulls right now, and it would be pretty impressive. You don't have them. You also, and this is real. They've won 3 supporter shields in, I think, a 7-year period. But they didn't get to a MLS Cup. They didn't get to the final game of the year. Why? Because, in my opinion, a team that only plays one way can get found out.
Mm-hmm.
And they only played one way. You saw it in the first game of the Eastern Conference Finals in 2018, where they tried to play differently on the fly, and they couldn't play comfortably in a different manner. And they struggled, and they couldn't adjust. And that's my bigger issue with how that went down. They didn't adjust. They didn't go back to what worked. At some point, you are who you are. They're trying to add more layers to who they are. You think back to... You think you can say Pep Guardiola, you can say Jurgen Klopp when they both went to England. Jurgen Klopp had to adjust because you can't just play the gegenpress, the counter press. You can't just look for transition if you are Liverpool in the Premier League. Why? Because a lot of teams are just going to drop off and give you the ball. There's nothing to counter press, and you're too good to just concede possession all the time because you want to press. No, you've got to have another way to play. And it took him a minute, but now Liverpool's one of the best teams in the world because he's added more layers. Red Bulls in New York haven't ever got past layer 1. And layer 1's been devastating in this league. You don't win that many supporter shields if you're not doing something right. But now that your team is turned over, it's a tough time to do the transition. If you had the talent, then it's a different conversation about, all right, we're gonna be more of a possession-oriented team when we need to be. We're gonna trap in some spots on the field where we need to be rather than playing a breakneck pace. We're gonna know when we can dial up the press and when we need to dial it back. We're gonna have more layers to our game. Better players can give you more layers. But right now, you're looking at a team that, it's not as talented of a team as the other teams in their group, in my opinion.
Right.
And it's not trying to just, trash the Red Bulls. It's the fact of who they are, where they are in their club's organization. RB Leipzig is the club in the Red Bull soccer organization. Red Bull Salzburg is the next feeder. The Red Bulls are somewhere after that with the Brazilian club and other Red Bull clubs around the world. That is difficult. They're not spending money. Your big additions this year, you look at David Jensen, the goalkeeper from Denmark, that spent the last 3.5 years with Utrecht in the Eredivisie. Good player. Not a Danish international. He's made some rosters, but he hasn't had a cap at 28. A good goalkeeper. Can he be what Luis Robles was? Maybe. Is he going to be that kind of a leader? Not year one. That's not possible. Right back, you have Kyle Duncan, who's a very good young American right back. He's young. He's 22. His rookie year in 2018 was cut short. He had an injury late in March, so he doesn't have a ton of experience at 22. Last year, he started 21 games across MLS and USL. You added Mandela Egbo, an English 22-year-old who went from Crystal Palace at the youth level to Borussia Mönchengladbach, couldn't get past their reserve team, moved over to Darmstadt in January, and then ended up, in the summer, and then ended up in New York. Okay, he's young and he hasn't really made it work in other places. What is he going to be in this league? You got Tim Parker and Aaron Long, one of the best center back pairings in the league. You still got that to build on. And you've got Amro Tarek and Sean Nealis. Good depth at center back. That's your best spot on this team, easily. Left back, we mentioned Siegrist, and he struggled in that game against RSL. Jason Pendant is the one that we want to see a little more of, a 23-year-old Frenchman who had played for Sochaux. They signed him on March 10th. That's why we hadn't seen him yet. 72 appearances for Sochaux in France. But it's another young European who, is he going to hit the ground running in this league? Is he going to need some time to adjust? And he didn't make it there. It's another player that you still have questions about. Sean Davis, I really like. I think he is a Dax McCarty type of central midfielder. Christian Caceres is still young and still developing. He's 20. He had a great goal against RSL. But can he be that two-way player that you need to pair up with Davis in the holding midfield? We'll have to find out. Kaku is one of the players who lines up in front of him, and Florian Velo is a player I really like coming off. He's had bad luck with injuries. Finally healthy. If he can stay healthy, he's a dangerous player. Really good playmaker. Daniel Royer is one of the most underrated players in the league. Up top, Brian White has been the main guy at 24. Solid forward. Not spectacular, but solid, hard worker. Tom Barlow, very similar. Similar body type, another big guy. He can hold play up for you a little bit. He can win things on set pieces. Matthias Jorgensen's the wild card, a 19-year-old Danish player. They spent a little bit of money on. They spent over $2 million to bring him in last year. But he didn't play very much last year for the first team. He played 22 times for Red Bulls 2 and scored 11 goals. But he only made 117 minutes worth of work in MLS last year. So where is he coming into this? Because he's the one who could change it a little bit up top, but we don't know if he's ready to. It's a lot of question marks with that roster. There's a lot of, maybe Josh Sims, the 23-year-old Englishman winger, maybe he gives you something different. Maybe Omer Fernandez, the 21-year-old American, gives you something different. Alex Muyl, we know what he is in this league. He's perfect for the Red Bulls press. Scrappy player. Mark Shutkowski, better player than I think he gets credit for. But another guy who's not going to carry you. He's not Zelarayan. He's not Nagbe. He's not Artur. You don't have a player at that level, just comparing Columbus's midfield. You don't have that player at Red Bulls. You don't have a Jossie Zardes at Red Bulls. You don't have a Pity Martinez and Ezequiel Barco, a Mateo Sosetu. You don't have players with that pedigree at Red Bulls. You do at center back. That is where you have the strength of your team, but your center backs can only do so much. So Red Bulls, while I have questions about Chris Armas, I don't think he has all the pieces he needs to be competitive. And it's a little hard. It all honestly reminds me of Jim Curtin in Philly, where it was, he's doing a pretty good job making the most of what he has. He doesn't have enough to win. He doesn't have enough talent to win. Is Red Bull ever going to give him what he needs to win? I don't know.
Yes.
I don't know. Philly eventually did.
Yeah.
They gave Jim Curtin more talent to work with, and he's gotten more out of it. And that's why he's still there and earned a long-term deal. Chris Armas, I think in some teams in this league, he'd do very well, but I don't know if he has the talent to do very well at Red Bulls. And if that's what they are, if it is, okay, they're looking to develop a player like Jorgensen, and they think his long-term trajectory is next to Salzburg or next to Leipzig, okay, that's what you are, it's what you are. Omer Fernandez, Duncan, are these two guys that they're looking, Caceres, are these guys that they're looking at as, okay, we're going to develop them. If they get to that point, we're going to move them over to Europe. Okay. Then you're going to play a lot of guys who are going to be learning on the job. That's tough. That's tough to get the results you need. But that's what it seems like the Red Bulls are at this point, because you've moved on from all of your veterans over the last few years. Compare the 2018 team to this team. It's not that long ago, and it's incredibly different. And you haven't reloaded. It's not comparing Atlanta's team then to now, because they reloaded. Red Bulls didn't. They're reloading through youth and players who have question marks, like Pendant and Egbo and players like that you're not reloading with Pity Martinez. You're not reloading with even a George Bello coming through who has played in a Youth World Cup. You're not reloading with players like that. You're reloading with some big question marks.
Yeah, and that for me was really in looking at Red Bulls. For me, it's like all of these players that you've lost, and this isn't a knock on the folks that they're bringing in, but it's not the same quality and the same levels of experience and the same levels of depth that you've had in where you've played previously. So for me, I do have more questions than I do answers right now, and I think that it's going to take time for this Red Bulls group to develop. I don't think that you're going to have that immediate return that if you're a Red Bulls fan you're looking for.
No, I just don't think it's possible. All right, we're going to get caught up on what's going on with FIFA because this has gotten FIFA-ish, as it usually does.
Okay.
So, Women's World Cup 2023. The reports, and remember, now it's only down to 2. It's Australia, New Zealand as a joint bid, and Colombia as the other bid. You have groups that go out for like a year, and they are grading the bids, and they are studying everything, and they are talking to everybody, and you come back with scores, and it was 4.1 to 2.9?
3.9.
No, 4.1 for Australia, New Zealand. 3.9 was Japan. They're not in it.
Right.
Colombia.
Right. They were.
That's what I was asking. 2.9 is what close. I said. I think that's what it was. Anyway, they weren't anywhere near the top possibilities. I think they were less than Brazil, if I remember right, if Brazil's number got published. And they pulled out. But now you've got, because everything about FIFA is political, you've got Alexander Safrin, head of UEFA, telling his members to vote for Colombia. And the speculation is that this is all going to revolve around future voting for the 2030 World Cup, and that going back to Europe. So from Gabriel Meluk, who is a reporter with El Tiempo in Colombia, what he thinks right now is where things stand is 14 votes for Colombia, the 5 CONMEBOL voters on the FIFA Council, the 9 UEFA votes. Australia, New Zealand has 10. 7 from Asia, 3 from Oceania. The FIFA vote, Gianni Infantino, he'd look foolish if he doesn't vote for Australia, New Zealand, because his committee said it was the better bid. So that would give them 11. CONCACAF, 5 votes. And according to Maluk, CONCACAF would vote as Infantino says. So then that would take Australia and New Zealand to 16. 7 votes from Africa are going to make the difference. How's it going to go? Nobody knows. That's the question. When you looked at these bids and you analyzed them from a neutral perspective, the Australia-New Zealand bid is better, according to FIFA's technical committee. It's what they do. They analyze these things, and they came back and said that that's the better bid. Well, politics are potentially going to change that. And this was in The Guardian. This got a lot of people riled up, as it should. 2 members of the UEFA delegation rubbished the technical reports in a meeting attended by its FIFA Council members and argued that because the Women's World Cup was a development tournament, its representatives should back Colombia. No, it's not a development tournament. It is a huge event, and it is a big event. And it's not to say Colombia can't do it. But when you have a technical committee that is evaluating the bids and who can do it better, you don't pick the one that can't do it the best for this event. You do that for potentially a U20 World Cup. You do that potentially for a U17 World Cup. You don't do that for the World Cup for women's soccer. You do not do that. That is disrespectful for UEFA to say that. They should understand, because they just had the Women's World Cup, what it can actually do. It's insulting and it's ridiculous, and it's not a knock on Colombia. It's just the bid is better on the Australia-New Zealand side. The technical committee's not getting into politics. They're evaluating the stadiums. They're evaluating the infrastructure. They're evaluating the plan on paper for what travel looks like. They're evaluating the nuts and bolts. They're not evaluating anything beyond that. You need all of that stuff to have a quality tournament. And you know what? You want to add on top of this? Australia got hosed last time around because Qatar should not be hosting a men's World Cup. We all know that. Australia didn't get any support in that round of stuff. Australia has been passed over and passed over and passed over. They can host a World Cup. And I think they would do a great job with it. And the Women's World Cup would be a great fit for them. If it was somebody else against Colombia, I'd love to see a World Cup in Colombia. I'd love to see a Women's World Cup in South America. I think it would have a huge impact. But if they can't do it as well as Australia and New Zealand can, they shouldn't do it. Colombia had the 1986 World Cup. They were awarded that in 1974. Colombia went through a number of different political regimes and leadership in that gap, and they didn't have the money, ultimately, to have that World Cup. And it ended up going to Mexico, nearly came to the United States. Can they do it now? I don't know. The technical committee said that Australia and New Zealand could do it better. That should answer your question, but now we're playing politics. The effect of 2030 is seemingly the only thing that makes any sense here that would turn it, because logically you should be picking the better bid. 4.1 to 2.8 was the technical committee scoring here. And I don't know. I don't know. FIFA's going to do FIFA.
And we are supposed to hear that bid determined around 11:30 our time. So in 90 minutes from now is when it's anticipated. We don't know. But that's what they're saying.
Yeah, well, it's FIFA. I'm not putting anything past them in terms of timing, what that looks like. There's just so many different elements to this that I do think Colombia having a Women's World Cup would be great for the game in South America. But the Women's World Cup, you don't take chances with where you throw it now. You need to have it in the best place to have it. And according to FIFA's own technical committee, that would be Australia, New Zealand. That's where it should go.
The one thing that got me more than anything else yesterday was when it was referred to as a development tournament.
Yeah, that's what I said. It's ridiculous.
That was when that came across. I'm like, are you serious? When you're classifying something like that? And no, it's not. I think that, I was looking at the metrics and all of the categories and things like that, and you're talking. I mean, literally, it is on a metric scale of 100 points each category. You get to 500, and then you grade it out. But when you're 132 points in the overall, better than one country to the other. And once again, it's a World Cup decision. So sadly, it doesn't surprise me when stuff like this comes out, but yeah, give it to the best place until something happens. And it's just still entirely frustrating. That's all.
Yeah, and we'll see. But according to Gabriel Maluk, it's looking like it's going to come down to which way the African voters go. They're going to decide this, and I don't know.
Tafka says, so instead of paying delegations for votes, we're just quid pro quoing votes for later bids. I'm honestly ready for World Cups to just be rotated between conferences on a scheduled basis. Then your bid, in quotation marks, is between nations in the same confederation.
I think it's going to even get beyond that, because you have very few countries that can host a men's World Cup now. Very few. With a 48-team tournament starting in 2026, the U.S. can host any event FIFA wants. England can host any event FIFA wants. And you could even do it across the United Kingdom and include Dublin and Glasgow and Cardiff and make it a bigger thing. Germany, France, Spain, Italy, on paper with infrastructure. I mean, I'm thinking just off the top of my head, like stadiums and infrastructure and a football community that can handle these sorts of things. The countries with big leagues can handle it. Brazil held it together barely for 2014. I don't know if they could do it again. Argentina doesn't have the infrastructure to do it. Colombia doing this is a stretch. The Women's World Cup is a little bit smaller, so maybe that opens the door a little bit further, not because it's a development tournament, it's a smaller tournament.
Yeah.
There's not as many teams. That means you can do less stadiums, and it can be a little more tightly contested in terms of where teams are based and travel and all those sorts of things. But you're getting to a point that your men's and women's World Cups, Japan can handle it. I think Australia can handle it, especially with New Zealand.
Mm-hmm.
As a one country doing it, that's about it.
Yeah.
Mexico potentially. Beyond that, I mean, you're talking about a combined Belgium, Netherlands. You're talking about combined things, which could work too. I have no problem with that if that's the way to go. If that makes for a good tournament, it makes for a good tournament. If Spain and Portugal combine to host in 2030, fine. I think the push is probably going to be for England and or the UK to host in 2030. And because they got screwed in 2018 when Russia got it. That should have been England's World Cup. It was the better bid. Russia got it. Russia had a good World Cup, but England should have gotten that World Cup. They'll get 2030 as a make good. This feels like it's part of that make good is in the negotiations to make sure that happens. You're just getting to where it's the same with the Olympics. Like, there's only a small number of cities and countries that can handle events that big anymore, and it's probably narrowed after this coronavirus pandemic. So
yep.
It's not even going to be like saying, okay, now it's going to be in Africa. Where are you going to put it? 2010 feels like a long time ago.
Yeah.
And I don't know if there's a country that can handle it by itself without massive investment to pull it off. And if you can pull that off, great. But the World Cup has gotten as big as it has, and it's just too unwieldy for a lot of countries in the world. And it's going to be the same on the women's side. It should be the same. The only difference is it's a little bit smaller of a tournament. That's it.
And Taka follows it up by saying, most nations can't do it, but we seem to be in a system of, quote, if you vote for us, we'll build what we need, end quote.
That's politics.
So currently, capable or not doesn't seem to deter awarding nations with winning bids.
Yeah, I think the problem would be if you say, okay, now it's in Asia. Well, now that means now it's in Japan. Now it's in Africa. I don't know where you put it.
Yeah.
Now it's in South America. Where do you put it? Like it's going to be a smaller number of groups to rotate it through. It's going to be the U.S. The U.S. will get another Women's World Cup here at some point. It's going to be England. It's going to be France. It's going to be Germany. It's going to be Spain. It's going to be Italy. It's going to be Japan. I think it should be Australia.
Yep.
That's about it. There's just not much more. So it's even going to be rotating just between countries who can actually pull it off.
Bartimus Prime, it feels like it's time for Australia to host a World Cup, men's or women's. It's unfortunate it doesn't have the support it needs to do this. However, Colombia would be a lot of fun on a cheaper flight. Yeah. Hashtag, just tell me where I need to book my ticket.
Yeah, no, Colombia would be great. I'd love it. But Australia is the better bid. I mean, you just evaluate the bids. Like, it's the better one. And why would you not have your second biggest tournament? I'm not saying that to knock it. I think at times we get a little bit too hung up on that. It is the second biggest tournament that FIFA has. The Men's World Cup is the biggest tournament they have. It's where they make most of their money. The Women's World Cup is number 2. Why would you take your second biggest property and move it to a lesser bid? Like, it doesn't make any sense. But you're playing politics. And this is where Gianni Infantino and FIFA should be like, look, guys, hold on here. I know what you're trying to do, but this event has to be in the best country to have it.
It's got to be a first-class event.
FIFA has wanted to have it. obviously from the technical committee and the bidding and the reports and the reviews, FIFA is saying that it should be in Australia. It's UEFA and their back and forth negotiation, because CONMEBOL's obviously going to vote for their country. You get that. But UEFA's playing politics. It's actually FIFA not trying to play politics this time, to be very clear. It's UEFA playing politics this time around.
Yeah. Let's see. Would you like for me to thank somebody before we head on any further?
Yes. Why don't you tell us all about our good friend Steve Apolinsky in Decatur, Georgia?
Apolinsky and Associates, LLC. Trial attorneys. Wow. Wrongful death and serious injury cases, over 30 years of experience, over $40 million in judgments for their clients in Georgia and Alabama. Recognized as legal elite by Georgia Trend Magazine, top 100 firms in the state of Georgia. A couple of different ways to reach out to Steve and back him for his support of us here at SDH and the SDH Network. AA-legal.com is the website. You go to the website, pop-up window happens, and if you want to talk to somebody immediately, you can do that. 24/7/365 or 366. How many days we have in the year. You can also shoot Steve an email at steve@aa-legal.com. Or give him a call, get a free consultation, 443-777-9191. That is Steve Apolinsky, Apolinsky and Associates, LLC. What's the website? aa-legal.com.
A Turner's? Is that what you were saying?
The Turners, yeah, exactly.
That's a new one.
It is, and that's pretty solid on my part for a profound lack of caffeine, dropping the wrong words into a read.
Sorry, I'm being a bully. I'll stop. My bad. Let's
Damn you!
On. What else is on your board today?
A lot of stuff overseas, but reminder, the USL Championship is going to start their 2-day alignment unveiling for the remainder of the season. That's going to happen between noon and 2, both today and tomorrow. So we'll keep an eye on the USL Championship and see what that looks like when they're returned to play. And according to Jeff Reuter at The Athletic, USL League One has agreed to a return to play as well. And the terms, according to Jeff, and I want to get the phrasing right, are practically identical to what we saw in the USL Championship. So
makes sense. No pay cut, which, I mean, it makes sense. It's the same. It's a lot of the same people. It's the same side from USL. You're not going to make it harder for League One to come back. If anything, you're going to try to make it easier. So, yeah. I'll be curious to see what they do with the schedule, because you have some travel in League One that's going to be difficult.
Yep.
And how do you handle that? If you just go smaller groups and do it, then that's just what you do for this season. You make it work.
Yeah. So we'll keep an eye on League One and see how that comes out as well. But once again, today and tomorrow between noon and 2, we get to see what the alignment looks like in the groups for the USL Championship and their return to play. A couple of programming reminders. We caught up with Graham Walsh, ELP Brands founder and CEO, as they are now the new top of the ladder when it comes to the UPSL. They own the joint. So we got to catch up with him for almost a half an hour yesterday. Nice. And that was good stuff, catching up with Graham. That'll be out, as well as catching up with the co-owner of Tulsa Athletic in the NPSL, Sonny D'Alessandro. That'll come out this afternoon. And Tulsa Athletic has decided that they will not play the Star-Spangled Banner. They will play Woody Guthrie's This Land Is Your Land as part of their pre-match for all Tulsa Athletic matches in the NPSL when they return. So that'll be out this afternoon as well. So a couple of cool things in the programming grid. And waiting on another couple of things as well. We're going to catch up with folks in Hattiesburg who now have a franchise online in the NPSL. That will be Friday, and that will be released on the weekend. So that's your programming update here at SDH.
And Tulsa Athletic should play the Sharon Jones and the Dap Kings cover of this.
I saw you mention that, yeah.
That's what they should play. No offense to Woody Guthrie, and there is a Tulsa connection for Woody Guthrie, so I get it. But yeah, the cover's better. Play Sharon Jones and the Dap Kings. Come on. Yeah. All right. Twitch, we got some comments. Let's get to those. Ropes asks about Vela, if there's any word on whether he's going, and there has not been. Don't know the update on Carlos Vela. Don't know where it stands with his wife and her due date and where things fall. So stay tuned on Carlos Vela and LAFC. KFC talking about the whole new World Cup. Lest we forget, a place you thought you knew, but now a bubble you can't bobble. That's pretty good, KFC.
Nice, very good.
I wish them all good health.
Yes.
Stay in the bubble. Stay in the bubble. Orlando City going into the bubble today. San Jose went yesterday. Stay in the bubble.
Yep.
Chris Ashley talking about live watching the 9 o'clock game. Stay tuned.
Yes.
Somebody's going with New York City and Philly in Group A. We'll see who that is because I don't know who it is. Ropes also asked about Michael Bradley and his surgery, if he was going to be there. I went back to double check. A couple weeks ago, Waking the Red, the SB Nation blog covering Toronto, said that they got a quote from Bradley saying, "I feel really good after his ankle surgery." 142 days since timeline for his return. He's doing well. The timing of the return to play, actually a good one for me personally. We had our first day of small group training a couple weeks ago, and he was in that. So he feels good. He's training, rehab's done, so he should be good. Is he 90 minutes good? We won't know yet. But he will be there and be part of it. So that helps Toronto a ton.
Speaking of Toronto.
Yep, what?
Breaking news sounder, please. Marky Delgado has now signed a new long-term deal. As per club policy, exact terms of the deal were not disclosed. So Marky Delgado is remaining in the fold for a long-term time.
No-brainer. One of the better midfielders in the league. That's a good signing for Toronto. Bernd Dursberger talking about Red Bull. Rope said he wouldn't be surprised if Red Bulls don't make it out of the group. Bernd on Leipzig talked about how they changed their approach this season. Possession went up by 6 percentage points. That's a big difference. You know, it sounds like, 6 percentage points, but that's big when you're talking about a whole season. You're talking about a team that has made their identity on pressing. So that's big. And look, that's the thing. When you get to be, when you can use the pressing, you can use that style to overcome a gap in talent. You can use it because you're just not as good. You're spending less. It can be a gimmick, whatever. But it can only get you so far. I don't think it wins you championships. Bayern Munich is not strictly a pressing team. They weren't under Guardiola. They haven't been. Can they press? Yeah, absolutely. Do they press at certain points? Yep. Are they only a pressing team? No. And Bayern Munich has been your best team in Germany for a long time. Dortmund used their style to get to where they did. Bayern was better. They had more talent. They got better. They've stayed better. Leipzig has climbed the ladder a lot, but they're not Bayern yet. They're trying to add more layers to who they are. The problem for New York Red Bulls is they don't have the talent of a Leipzig or these other teams that adapt. They don't have Liverpool's talent. They don't have Leipzig's talent. I'm not even talking about, no, they're not going to beat them straight up. I'm saying in comparison to their league, they don't have enough talent to be this super diverse team. It's just not there. So at a time where they're trying to add more diversity to the way they play, honestly, now is the time they need to be even more press-centric and even more on that, because that's their equalizer. You can't, unless you're going to develop the talent, and I don't know if we have enough on Chris Armas and the coaching staff to show us that's the case yet. Unless you're going to make the talent be better than it's been. If you don't have the talent to compete, you've got to find your gimmick, your hook. A press can be that. Now they're trying to be a better team without having the talent to be the better team. And I just don't know if they can do that. But we'll see. We'll see. We'll find out. Badgermon, speaking of USL League One, requesting a 1v1 with someone from Forward Madison.
Okay.
That's for you, 1v1, man.
No issues for me. Maybe it gives us a chance to get some kits and hang them here in the office.
I always see your gimmick here. I'm trying to think of who you'd want to get from Forward Madison that would be a little different. Everybody's went down the marketing side with them, which is great, and their marketing has been awesome. Try to get somebody on the coaching side. Try to talk soccer with somebody there. I feel like the soccer conversation with Forward Madison has been secondary to their awesome kids.
No question.
It shouldn't be the case because they're a good team, very good team.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody on the coaching or development or a player.
Okay.
They've got some veteran players that would be interesting interviews as well. So,
yep.
All right.
All right.
You've been assigned. Go for it.
Yes. All right. I got a couple of other things on Twitter. How are you on Twitch?
Daryl Shore was the recommendation from Badger Month.
Okay. Daryl Shore. All right. I will write that down. Daryl Shore.
Yes. So if you have other suggestions, OSG Nelson on Twitter, yell at him.
Bring it.
And let him know.
And friend me on Twitter so I can friend more people because of that silly algorithm.
Let's follow.
Friend. Okay,
follow.
Fine. Whatever. Follow me on Twitter.
We got to update your social media tag because there's different things in different places.
Okay. So there are different things in different places. I agree with that.
You're not friending people on Twitter.
Well, fine. Follow me on Twitter then.
Follow's the safe word, I think, generally. Even Facebook's went to using follow instead of friending people. So
yeah,
you can friend people, but you can also just follow them. So
yeah, just follow me on Twitter because of their stupid algorithm, and it's 1 for every 2.1, and so I need to have folks continue to follow me on Twitter so I can follow more people, so they can follow me, and I can follow more people. It's a vicious cycle.
Follow OSG Nelson so he can stop complaining about his follower account.
Yes, there you go.
You turned into a middle schooler now with the follower accounts. I like it.
Yeah. Matt Wagner on Twitter. Summer transfer window question.
Okay.
He's guessing that COVID-19 is likely the death of this for the most part this year, but how do you see Trump's freeze on visas impacting it and other MLS businesses?
Won't affect it because athlete visas are not one of the affected categories. I double-checked that. And with anything that gets said right now, there's like 1,000,001 exemptions from whatever thing is being talked about. So athletes would be part of it. Somewhat related, there was a lot of talk yesterday out of New York City players and staff about the potential self-quarantining when coming back from Orlando. This was in the New York Post this morning. The Yankees and Mets will not be subject to the Tri-State Travel Advisory issued Wednesday, requiring travelers from states with heightened COVID-19 cases to self-quarantine for 14 days upon arrival in New York. Dozens of players will be traveling to New York from various states, including Florida. And this is talking about just getting ready to play, where both teams had players training at team facilities before they were closed. So if the Yankees and Mets are not having to do it when New York City comes back from a secure environment, they're not going to have to do 14 days of self-quarantine. That felt like something being jumped to without more details. And that was kind of unnecessary when that started making the rounds yesterday. So I don't think that's going to be the case. Also, when you look at Canada on this type of front, Major League Baseball submitted a plan to the Canadian government to play in Toronto this year because they have the Blue Jays, and health authorities are examining it. Anyone entering Canada for non-essential reasons must quarantine for 14 days. The border remains closed to non-essential travel until at least July 21st. Baseball's looking at starting after that. From an MLS perspective, these teams are going to come to Florida to play, so they're coming across the border on this side. They're going to be allowed to go back, you would assume, as part of all this. Yeah. And all of that is going to be well after the July 21st date anyway. And you're going to find a way to make it work because these are not just average people going without any kind of a testing protocol in their day-to-day lives. These are all athletes who are being tested on a regular basis who would be coming out of a safe environment, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's not your average person. So your average person's rules are not going to apply to it. So keep that in mind with all this different stuff, whether it's travel, whether it's self-quarantining, whether it's the visa situation. It's different. It's a different conversation. just because we hear some craziness happening, let's not freak out yet. But the visa thing, it is a different category. I believe, what was it, P2B was one of the ones that was going to be blocked accordingly
H1B.
to H1B. I think it's H1A is the athlete side of it, which is a separate one that is even being talked about.
Yeah. NWSL question from Cuppers this morning.
Okay.
Going back to the Rapinoe discussion from yesterday, I agree with @Longshoe and have been disappointed in not providing a statement stating why she's not playing and that she's done nothing to promote the tournament. She had multiple segments on Colbert, CBS in parentheses with an exclamation point, and they did not even mention it. Worried about COVID? I get it. Spreading social justice, great, but multiple platforms for the most popular figure in women's soccer, and I hope OL Reign has a great Challenge Cup that could help this tournament.
Yeah, it's really strange. It's really strange because Kristen Press issued a statement. Tobin Heath issued a statement. OL Reign's manager gave an interview to a French outlet and talked about it. And then the club said, as it's been reported, she's not going to play. And the club issued a quote on it. And nothing. And I hadn't seen the Colbert interview, but you're on CBS.
Mm-hmm.
Like, at a minimum is, hey, watch the NWSL starting this weekend on CBS and CBS All Access. Nothing.
Mm-hmm.
I'm looking back at her Twitter and nothing. And, Megan Rapinoe's doing a bunch of amazing things in bringing social issues that have to be talked about to light and talking about them and using that platform in a big way. But she also plays for OL Reign, and I mean, I'm looking. I would think you could use that platform as well and strengthen your own platform.
Yeah.
I think that's a big thing with sports that you can do is when you're playing, your platform gets wider and taller, and you can use it more. I don't see anything about OL Reign on her timeline. Nothing.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm scrolling back, and there's some players who get retweeted, not OL Reign players, but women's national team players, and there's nothing. So
what?
I don't know.
I mean, what I would like to see and what I would hope to see is the point that you and I were going through with Mike yesterday when he was on with us. I would hope that the players who aren't going to be there, injury, opt out, what have you, would do some things to support their clubs and support their league as a substitute for them not being on the pitch. Do stuff on social media, play up the tournament, do remote interviews with Jen and Allie on CBS this weekend. Do something at halftime where you're sitting down and having a talk back. It's just the simplest things that you could do to help this process out. If you're not going to play, be that team player in the sense of the league and sit there and promote the league doing things like that and play the league up. But Megan Rapinoe hasn't done anything on social media, and it makes you scratch your head. I would hope that the players who aren't going to be a part of it for whatever reason will sit there and play up this league, play up how important it is, because the league's at a key point in its growth. It's going to be out there. It's going to be the first pro league that's out there, and one of your flag bearers for women's soccer in this country hasn't been a part of this discussion.
Yeah, I just don't understand it. If there's an issue with the league with Rapinoe, or an issue with the team with Rapinoe, because there's just nothing there. Rapinoe and Press and Heath, along with Megan Klingenberg, have started a company, Re-Inc. They're Re_Inc. On social media, and they, again, do great things with their company, but now all of them are doing that. Klingenberg, I don't think, has said anything about not playing. I believe she was on the Portland roster.
She was yesterday, if I remember correctly. I remember seeing that yesterday, yeah.
Okay, so the other three in the company are not. I don't know. there's not a right answer here. There's not a wrong answer here because, yes, you are dealing with a global pandemic that changes the conversation completely. But it's just strange that even if you don't feel comfortable going to play right now, and the reason that Press and Heath mentioned was because of COVID-19. It wasn't because of anything else. That doesn't mean you shouldn't be supporting your teammates and the league that is involved in at least paying you some salary, even if it's being redirected from the federation or whatever. Like, you wouldn't be getting that if you weren't part of the league. It's weird, and I don't get it, and I don't want it to be the conversation. And once we get into games, I don't think it will be. It shouldn't be. I hope it's not. I hope that you see support from these valuable voices on the women's game that even if they're not comfortable to participate in this event, the event can do good things for women's soccer, and their voices are needed in that. And I hope that they're part of the conversation. There's going to be plenty to talk about starting Saturday. There's going to be plenty to talk about in the lead up to it. There's going to be good soccer on display, but it's a very weird situation, and I just don't know why. And hopefully it changes. But it's an odd one. I don't get it.
Yep. Klingenberg, Sauerbrunn, Horan.
It's only 3 who opted out. Klingenberg was the one I was pretty sure had not opted out. 3 have opted out and have been said as opting out. There are injuries with other players, but 3 opt-outs. It's 3 high-profile women's national team players, and 2 have given statements, and Rapinoe has not. And I don't know why. I don't know. Yeah. I don't know what the deal is there. Maybe there's something going on behind the scenes. I have no idea.
Didn't Adriana Franch injury yesterday? Yeah,
knee injury. She's going to miss out.
Yeah, so that was the one that from Portland yesterday. But yeah, part of the roster. Just looked it up just a second ago. It's very it's odd, and I wish. I
mean, at a minimum, throw a retweet. Like at a minimum, tweet good luck to your team, like stuff like that. Because when it's not there, it gets louder than it should be. And I don't get it. I don't know. I'm not sure what's going on there.
Yeah, Colonel found Megan's wear a mask tweet from 11 hours ago and says, in his opinion, she's tweeting about what is important.
And she is, and that's great. But the retweet button's a click. Like retweet the NWSL schedule, and honestly, just give a statement about why you're not playing, because your your women's national team teammates did, and they said why they weren't going to play. Okay, and that's a valid reason. They're concerned about it. They're not going to play. If you don't want to play because of whatever your reason is, that's completely fine. But I feel like it would help the situation. I feel like it would help the league and all that. So, I don't know. I think, again, we talked about it before. I think in terms of soccer in this country, you have a different level of responsibility to the game than a basketball or a football or a baseball player does. And this is not a women's thing. This is a men's and women's thing. You're looked at to do more, because there is it's an unwritten agreement, but I think there is an idea that you have to sell the game. You have to, promote the game, because we're all still trying to grow it. And just to not do that in this case doesn't make sense, and I don't know why that would be the case.
Let's see. We've got international stuff that we can get into, as the timeline is still obviously open for anybody that has any questions here for Thursday Thoughts. It is Thursday, right?
Yes, it is Thursday.
Okay.
Chris Ashley's got a couple things before we get there. He's got 4 groups of 3 or 3 groups of 4 for USL League One as the possibilities. Roughly, Fort Lauderdale, Orlando, Tormenta makes sense.
Yeah.
Greenville, Chattanooga, Richmond makes sense. Tucson, North Texas, Omaha, about as good as you can get.
Necessity, yeah.
Madison, Toronto, New England, about as good as you can get. I mean, it gets harder with some regions, but that's not too bad. I guess you could play Depends on how many games you're going to get. If you do everybody double home and away in your group, that's just 4 games. You might have to do more than that. God, you're going to do a double home and away and get 8 games? And then
next nearest group?
Home and away with the other group close to you to get 6 more games. That would give you 14. It's not bad. Maybe that's the way to do it. Get 14. That's, somewhat in line with what the championship's doing. We'll see. I think the groups are pretty good there. If you went to 3 groups of 4, you'd throw Richmond,
Greenville
north?
Into the southern one. Yeah, Richmond goes north. Greenville comes south.
Chattanooga goes where? That's
a
where
good
it
question.
gets tough. And then somebody's got to go to Tucson, North Texas, Omaha.
Yeah.
I guess Madison?
Yeah.
And in Toronto, New England, Chattanooga, Richmond?
Wow. Uh-huh.
Yeah. I think the 4 groups of 3 might be the better way. And you play everybody in your group twice home, twice away.
Yeah.
And then you play Group A plays Group B, Group C plays Group D, home and away. And that's still not ideal, but it's probably about the best you're going to get.
Yeah.
Atlanta Phoenix with a question that they've been thinking about. Revenue losses that MLS is experiencing. Do you see a potential push to expand the league to 32? Garber mentioned that further expansion was not off the table. Could a quick injection of cash with those $300 million plus expansion fees? Could be that. Yeah. Could be. Are the number of potential owners with that kind of money, is that smaller than it was before? That would be the question. I think the idea makes sense because you're looking for quick injection of cash to make up for losses. You are going to then spread the wealth even further, and that's what that money makes up, but it's going to give you some working capital straight out of the gate. I just don't know who those would be straight off the bat. I mean, you're talking about Vegas would be a possibility because they've come up multiple times. Maybe you go back to San Antonio and say, look, hey, we're adding Austin, but you want to cut a check?
Yeah.
Because we create a rivalry, and it's the San Antonio Spurs organization. You're not talking about somebody random, It's a really well-run organization. Maybe you want to bring them to the table. San Diego. Can you go back to San Diego? And maybe now with San Diego Loyal, is it them moving up and being involved? Maybe. I don't know if those groups are going to be able to cut that kind of a check now. And that's going to be the question. Maybe we don't know that for a little bit of time. But you're going to get to 30 by 22. Could you look at getting 2 more in by 24?
Yeah.
And have some time to grow towards it.
To get you 26, yeah.
Maybe. I bet you it comes up. It kind of has to. I mean, let's be real. You're trying to figure out how to bring in money right now. So, that's one way to do it. And people will stomp their feet and yell and scream and talk about leagues only held up by expansion fees. Well, kind of right now, it might be. And that's the reality we're dealing with in a global pandemic where you need money as soon as possible.
Then
that's
you
why
end
Serie
up
A might sell part of itself off.
Yeah.
This is the reality everybody's facing.
Then you're dealing, if you get to 32, you could have 4 divisions of 8.
Mm-hmm.
Then you could have playoff structure, expanded playoffs, blah, 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 more revenue, more TV, all that kind of stuff. So it could.
I mean, I had thought before that 30, once you got to 30, you had to figure out what you were going to do long term. You could push it to 32 and still do what you're doing. If you're going to go past that, then you're talking about Tafka's Opus, then you're talking about expansion, then you're talking about, is it MLS 1-2? Then you're talking big reimagining. Yeah. You could go to 32, like you said, with 4 groups of 8 and make it work, or even 8 groups of 4 within that and make it work. And from a scheduling, from a structure standpoint, 32 can work fine, and it would be potentially $600 million into the coffers that would be divided out among teams that could use that money right now. So, it's not crazy to think about.
Matt Wagner says that Doug Robertson over at the Ages, he posted his predicted starting 11 options yesterday for the tourney. What are each of our picks?
I did not see his, so I'm not going off of that. So I don't. If I end up going the same way, it's not because I saw Doug's. I think it's what I've been saying for a while now. I think they're going to stay in the 3-4-3. I think it's Kazan in goal. I think the three center backs are Meza on the left, Robinson in the middle, and Escobar on the right. I think it's Brooks Lennon as your right wing back, George Bello as your left wing back. What are your hand signals? You're confusing.
I'm agreeing. I'm agreeing with you and mapping it out in my brain as it goes.
I was like, are you waving the plane into land? I'm confused.
No. That would be like this. No, I'm agreeing with you, but I'm mapping it out as you're saying it with my hands.
So 3-4-3, three center backs, Meza, Robinson, Escobar, wing backs, Bello on the left, Lennon on the right. It's Eric Remedi, it's Emerson Heineman as your two holding midfielders, your two number 10s or part of your three up top, Barco and Josetu, and Pity Martinez up top. I think that puts the most amount of talent on the field together to make it work.
Yep. No, with you 100%. Dig it. Tafka's like, what? Tafka heard Opus.
Tafka, you're going to have to go back and listen.
Yeah.
You can go read Tafka's Opus at soccerdownhere.net.
There you go.
Make sure you put on a pot of coffee because it's long.
It is.
Need some juice.
It's a deep dive and have it over a meal. So
yeah, what it does is it makes you think. You can disagree, and we went back and forth. There's elements of it that we disagree on, but what it does is it makes you think about the structure of the game and of the leagues, and that's important because, look, the structure here has evolved over years because it is unique. It doesn't mean it's perfect. It doesn't mean it can't be tweaked. It doesn't mean it can't be adjusted, but yeah, it's different, and it's different because of the way the game's grown here. It's different than England. It's different than Germany. It's different than anywhere else because the game's grown in a really weird way in this country, and we're all still figuring it out. So to learn a little bit more about looking at it a different way, go read that opus and get a different look at it than the way I've looked at it, the way John's looked at it, the way other people have looked at it. Get a different perspective on it and see what parts of it you like and what parts of it you don't like. And that's how you learn more and think more critically about the way the league's structured. I mean, like, could you go to 32 teams easily? Yeah. Could you go to 34? If 4 people showed up with $300 million checks and they were all
going to say no?
Ownership groups and they all had good plans, are you going to say no? Probably not. Yeah. How do you make it work? How can you make it work? If USL came to you, because USL's got issues right now too. If they came to you and said, look, we can't do this right now the way we're doing it. Buy us out. Here's an offer. Maybe that becomes the right way to go. Maybe some teams say, well, look, we see the future here. We're not going to make money in USL. We want to come into MLS. And maybe then you create a partnership because MLS wants a second division that is separate so players have a place to develop. All this is on the table right now. That's the world we're in right now. I mean, you've got businesses recreating who they are on the fly to stay alive. Leagues are no different. So, it's time to think outside the box potentially and figure out what's best for now, but also figure out what's best for whatever the future brings.
Because at their most basic, what are they? They're businesses. Yes, they're involved in sports entertainment, but they're a business, whether it's MLS being single entity as a business with individual owners that are a part of the process, or in the USL, one group at the top, you've got a bunch of owners in a bunch of different cities. Yes, it's different and how you went about it, but at the end of the day, you're still a business, and you've got to figure out how to be a successful business in your marketplace and in your market. Sustainability, especially now, is one of the larger questions you have. Yes, you have all of these great ideas about what you want to do and how you want to have your league and your team and your area evolve and go forward. But at the end of the day, you're a business. And if you can't make your ends meet, You've got to figure out how to do that, or make the sad decision about not continuing your business. And I'm not talking about soccer. I'm talking in the larger sense. But the bottom line is business, business, business. And it's all, you can only do handouts, and you can only sit there and have a negative budget for so long before you have to make those hard decisions. We saw that with Minnesota United yesterday.
Yeah, Minnesota had to lay off some of their full-time staff. And, I think there was some reactions of surprise to that, and it can't be. I mean, that's just the reality. Minnesota United's statement on it was, like many businesses across the country, Minnesota United has experienced a significant negative financial impact caused by the global COVID-19 pandemic. As a result of these unforeseen circumstances, the club has unfortunately had to make some difficult decisions that include some staff reductions to our full-time workforce. It's the reality. That's where any business is right now for the most part. There's a few who, look, this fell into line for them, and Amazon's made a lot of money, a lot more money than they expected. There's others like that. There's a lot who haven't, and you have to adjust and figure it out. So there's going to be more of that, I would imagine. There's going to be more questions about things like that, because that's just where we're at. This tournament, I saw people try to speculate that, like, oh, the MLS is chasing the money, or Don Garber's chasing the money. They're chasing survival. They're chasing relevance. Those things go hand in hand. They're finding a way to make good on sponsorship contracts that they can't make good on in a normal sense. That's why they're opening up the possibility for stuff on the shorts and stuff on the other sleeve. That's why they're trying to figure out anything possible to make whatever they can, or to keep whatever they have in terms of revenue. That's where you're at. That's life. And yeah, that's why you have a ton of protocols in place to try to make this event happen with as minimal of a disruption as you possibly can. Nothing's foolproof. You could have positive tests in Orlando. It doesn't mean one positive test turns into the whole tournament shuts down. I think that needs to be wiped away from people's minds. But yeah, you're doing the best you can to make the most you can out of this. There is nothing wrong with that. I don't know why people are trying to position it as a bad thing. Major League Baseball is trying to make the best of what they can make out of their own self-sabotage to a degree, but also a global pandemic. The NBA is trying to make the best out of it. The NHL is trying to make the best out of it. College football, even for some of their really poorly thought ways of trying to make the best out of it, are trying to make the best out of it. That's where we all are. It's the same as any other business. So you have to keep that in mind. And it's not that you have to give them the benefit of the doubt, but at least understand where they're coming from. It is about survival. It is about perception. It is about relevance. It's about trying to move forward. And I hope that they would have the support of people who love the sport and the game and just sport in general that they're trying to do, because they're not doing it recklessly. If you're a college football fan, you should be questioning some of these programs who are not doing it the right way.
Amen.
But MLS is doing it the right way. They're taking what's worked in Europe and adapting it and enhancing it and making it stronger to do it, because the situation's different here. There's just these, for me, there's just these separate threads going through all of it. You can't, sports can't eliminate the virus. That's impossible. Sport, to function, has to do things differently. And you are seeing sports who are doing it well, and sadly you're seeing some sports that aren't doing it well. Why are they trying to do it well at all? Because they're trying to survive as a business, because sports is a business. And it's an important thing, not just for the players. I think at times it's, it's only think about the athletes. It's for everybody who works in the industry. And it's important. The longer it goes without revenue, the longer it goes without functioning, the more Minnesota United situations you're going to have where you can't pay people. These conversations are going to become part of it. And then it gets just back to the big picture. Sports can't control people doing smart things in their personal lives. Hopefully, sports can be an example, because what I've seen is not a mentality from sports as, we're going to come back because we're special and we're going to do it. And yeah, it's been a no, we're going to come back and we understand the responsibility, and here's 50 pictures of athletes showing up in a mask. Mm-hmm. Here's 2,000 words on the protocols that we're following to make it safe. Here is another statement from somebody with our organization about what you can do to be safe. That's what it has to be. You know, people do look at athletes. People do look at teams and do take cues from them. If sports can come back and show very clearly everything they are doing to come back, and that rubs off on people to say, you know what, I've been against wearing a mask because it's uncomfortable, but if they can do it, then I can do it. Okay, hey, good. If that can work, and yeah, maybe I'm just naive and pumping sunshine again, but people do follow what sports teams and athletes do. And if them coming back to save their business can motivate some people to do things better in their personal lives to slow the spread of the virus down, I am all for it.
I think we are caught up on Twitter as I'm trying to monitor what's going on with the FIFA Women's World Cup bid in a day that screams for Bob Lee more than any other. No,
that's not fair, because it's not that situation. You're putting this conversation into a corruption conversation.
I want his analysis. I want him and Jeremy Schaap sitting at a table today.
I know he would be great at that, but you're also saying that referencing him yelling at FIFA about corruption. I want to make it clear, this vote about Australia, New Zealand, and Colombia, there's no hint of corruption. There's nothing about corruption involved in it. Colombia's not paying people off.
No.
Australia, New Zealand's not paying people off. It's about politics.
Yes.
That's very different. And there's nothing wrong with, well, okay, we're going to support you here and we want your support over here. Like, that's politics. That's not corruption. I want to make sure that people don't hear you want Bob Lee involved because you want him to yell at FIFA because of corruption, because he did, and he did it very effectively. Corruption's not going on here. I don't think Colombia has the money to pull a Qatar in the situation.
No, they don't.
No offense, Colombia, but they're not trying to buy the Women's World Cup in the way that Qatar did the Men's World Cup. So just to be clear, it's not a corruption situation.
No, it is his experience and Jeremy Schaap's experience in dealing with these kind of deadline days and laying it all out in a journalistic sense. That's what I would have liked today, because I'm sitting here scouring the internet and YouTube and Twitter and my mega cable package trying to find somebody who's talking about this live. And
it's Australia, New Zealand, and Colombia.
That's why I'm trying to find Australia, New Zealand TV that's live so I can watch it.
You don't have that on your cable package, John.
No, and I'm trying to find if anybody's got a bootleg stream for any Australia, New Zealand sports network that's going on.
But you got to remember, this is not a normal time. They're not having a FIFA Congress with everybody hanging out in Zurich. This is all like Zoom calls and stuff. So there's nothing to really cover. It's just waiting on things leaking out of it.
So does Zoom have an Australia New Zealand channel?
No, that's not what Zoom is. Do you know what Zoom is?
I've used it. I don't know if I've used it well.
Do you know it's not a TV network?
Yeah, I know it's a business. It's an app. It's whatever you want to call it. It's a business application.
In my opinion, it is a lesser version of what we use to do the show every day.
Agreed.
So we use Skype to do the show every day, and Skype has been very good to us. I don't think Zoom is as good as Skype, but Zoom's cooler. So maybe they're using Skype. Skype's old school. I don't know. Maybe they're using some new fancy FIFA thing. Who knows?
Does Australia, New Zealand have a Skype channel?
You don't watch a Skype channel, John. Do you know what that is?
A Skype channel?
There's not a Skype channel. It doesn't exist. Skype is how we connect like a phone call.
I'm searching for something.
There's nothing
here.
There's nothing. Nobody's talking about it, because the only people that would be are going to be journalists from Australia, New Zealand, and Colombia, but there's nothing to cover because they can't see what's going on. So they would just be sitting there for hours like,
I'll take talking heads doing the tapping on the table.
I don't want to see them tapping their fingers. They have nothing
I
to talk
want, I
about.
want, the, I want the Tay guys analyzing this and taking their shirts off and yelling at each other. That's what I want.
That would be the Colombian version, and I don't know if there's enough to talk about to even do that. So you're getting some back and forth about all this. I just want to make it clear the difference here. There is, because I'm seeing the words thrown around right now. There is nothing that has been said about Colombia using any form of corruption to get this World Cup instead of Australia and New Zealand. There is nothing about Australia and New Zealand using any form of corruption to try to get votes.
Mm-hmm.
The votes and the vote trading and all of that, I think, revolves around a future vote for a future World Cup. It is basically UEFA saying, hey, CONMEBOL, we're going to vote for you here, and we want your support to bring a World Cup to us in the next vote.
Yep.
That's politics?
Yeah.
I mean, if you have a problem with that, I get it.
No, that's how the world works. I mean,
yeah, I get it in the sense that the better bid wouldn't win, and if you're FIFA, and again, this then gets to another level of it because I'm seeing it blamed on FIFA. This is not a FIFA issue. This is UEFA. This is UEFA working on trading votes. FIFA, by all accounts, their technical committee said that Australia and New Zealand was the better one. By all accounts, Infantino, according to Colombian media, is going to vote for this and going to move votes with him. CONCACAF would follow what he's going to do. So it's not FIFA manipulating it to Colombia. It's UEFA manipulating it to try to get future votes for future competitions. It sounds like getting hung up on details, but those details are important because it's not about a bunch of corruption and FIFA and yelling. It's not the situation that happened last time around. It's not any of that. It's a very different kind of conversation.
And news out of Mexico, the preseason tournament towards the Apertura 2020 is confirmed, and it looks like it's going to be from July 3rd to July 15th.
What is it? What's the information? Because last time we had some rumors about two separate tournaments going on, one in Guadalajara, one in Mexico City.
One's at Estadio Akron. They're calling it the Copa G&P. Matches at the Estadio Akron, July 3, 4, 7, 8, 11, and 12. And then other matches in a second location. Once again, same dates, 3, 4, 7, 8, 11, 12. And then you get into your semifinals and finals on the 15th, 16th, and 19th. Or 13th and 14th are the semis. Oh, wait. Yeah. July 15, July 16 are your semifinals, and July 19th is your final in this preseason tournament.
Okay. I was being a bully about Twitch and Skype and Zoom and all that. So thank you, Chris Ashley, for checking me on that. My bad. I just didn't know if you understood what it was. I was just checking. I was confused. You were confusing me, so I was trying to clarify.
I'm good at that.
Just saying.
Yeah.
Let's see, because there's a mega thread here on Reddit as we're waiting for more updates here, and let's see if they've got any updated info from what we've talked about with this. You can go to the TWG Facebook if you can find what that is, and I think they're talking about it in Australia, John. So there's your channel you're looking for.
All right.
I don't know what that is exactly. Nothing has started yet, so the FIFA live stream announcement thing on YouTube is supposed to go later today. Is that 1:05 our time? It might be.
Because I'd heard 11:30.
They might have pushed it back. The FIFA TV on YouTube channel says waiting for FIFA TV today at 1:05. Or no, that was June 23rd at 1:05. So now who knows? FIFA's FIFA's lost the plot. Mark Richt has lost control of FIFA.
Mark Richt has lost control of FIFA. There you go. What was that on Facebook again? Who was it?
TWG, which I don't know what that is.
Okay. All right. So I've hit TWG and seeing, and it's just thinking. I don't know.
Technology with John.
Correct. Well, there's a T that's TWG.
No, they would not have anything about Australia, New Zealand getting a vote.
The World Game is what it is. The World Game.SBS. Yeah, the World Game. So, well, there you go.
Joint statement, USL League One, USLPA. Pleased to announce that the USL Players Association and USL League One have formally reached an agreement on a return to play for the 2020 season. Both sides are now preparing to start league play on July 18th in USL League One. That is officially official.
Yes. And, the teams are now sending out all of their appropriate press releases and things like that. Forward Madison sent out the same one that the USL sent out. So the teams are now just hitting copy, paste, and repeat.
First part of the alignment for the championship will come out today. Half the groups will be announced today, the other half tomorrow. That's going to be at about noon our time here in Atlanta. So lots of stuff on the USL front popping up as they try to get back on the field. We'll stall just a little bit longer and see if we get any updates on this FIFA stuff.
Oh, there's plenty of stuff in Europe. We haven't got to Europe yet. So,
okay, we'll get there. One thing I wanted to share that I think is actually pretty cool here. Simon Peach, who's the chief football writer for PA Media, which is the UK's national news and sport agency. Manchester United have decided against releasing any player under the age of 19 due to the coronavirus circumstances. They're helping those young pros in leaving. Financial packages have been offered to a number of the players to help them until the end of August. They've been invited back to train. So they're trying to help place them, essentially, is what it sounds like. Instead of, as you see teams get to that age where they're not going to sign a pro deal, they're going to leave the club. A lot of times they just get released and they're out on their own. It looks like at least Manchester United's trying to help them land on their feet as best you can during this, which is good and is definitely well thought out. So some good news out of Manchester United. Some good news from them yesterday with a good win, too.
Yeah, Martial with a hat trick and Sheffield United wobbling a little bit out of the blocks. Let's see what else happened yesterday. It was a lot of 1-0s, and then, of course, you had Liverpool pretty much taking Crystal Palace to the woodshed, winning 4-0. So it's now going to be up to Manchester City and Chelsea. If anything other than a win, it goes to Liverpool in that match. And we saw that Sergio Aguero's out till August because of his knee surgery, which apparently went very well.
You don't know when he's out till. He might be out past August. He's had the surgery. There's no way to know if he'll be back for August or not. They're hoping he's back for Champions League, but they don't know.
Yeah. So there was that yesterday, and I'm trying to look through all of my other stuff. Sean Dyche is so fed up with Burnley that he's thinking of leaving.
Okay. Because
of the perceived lack of investment from his point of view, not signing players to those extra 1-month deals to the end of the season. So he's just not happy with the overall financial situation and how he is not able to either re-sign players or bring in players. So there's a debate, an internal debate inside of Sean Dyche as to whether or not that he's going to leave, considering he and the general manager, the managing general partner, are disagreeing in public right now.
Well,
so
they might not have the money to sign these guys.
Exactly. Yeah, and that's
deals.
to me, and
that's
that's
kind of an element here.
Yeah, and Burnley has done very, very well in the marketplace in the Premier League ever since they came up. If you haven't read it, it's a couple of years old. There's a Joe Posnanski article in NBC Sports World where Joe went to Turf Moor and looked at how things were for Burnley and how they were making ends meet and still kind of doing things not with the same economics that a lot of other teams were at the time. Like I said, it's a couple of years old, but it was a really good deep dive that Joe did when it came to Burnley and how Sean Dyche was doing things and how Burnley was functioning and still being the mid-table team that would flash and be in contention for European competition every once in a while, but still that mid-table team that's right there in the Premier League. So that was a really good read.
So where are they in the table right now?
Efforting, but my gut tells me it's in the middle third like they always are.
Are they at threat of being relegated?
No.
Are they looking at a possibility of getting into Europe?
That's an outside shot right now. Give me a second and I'll give you the table. So here's how it's looking. Burnley's 12th. Mm-hmm. Once again, right there. Middle of the table as always. They're a win out of 9th. 5 points behind.
How many points out of European spots? That's the important part.
10.
And how many points safe are they?
They are 12 safe.
Why would you spend money on short-term deals?
Yeah.
You are what you are. You're 12th, and that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
And unless you're worried that, okay, if you don't spend this money, you're not going to be able to hold on, and you don't really have a shot at jumping 6 teams to get into Europe and jumping that high up. So you are what you are. You do have to look at the bottom line. There's no point in signing guys to short-term deals to extend it. You should have some players who can step in and do a decent enough job to stay 10th to 14th, because that's probably what you're looking at.
Yeah, and that's traditionally what they've been. I mean, there have been
just
flashes.
Reality.
Yeah, but there were flashes a couple of years ago where they were hanging in. I think a couple of years ago, they made it into Europa League.
No, I know, but that doesn't matter here. What matters here is you got no revenue coming in, and you have some players whose deals are up June 30th, and why would you keep them? If you weren't going to keep them anyway, if you're going to sign them to a long-term deal, okay, cool, that's a different conversation. If you're going to keep them for the future. But if you're going to keep them for 8 games, 7 games, that don't make a difference to you?
Yeah, no, I'm agreeing with you.
Play some kid on your roster. I know,
yeah.
But the rest of it doesn't matter to this decision. Like, Dyche is being a little silly and arguing this much about it, talking about stepping down. Like, there's no point in spending that extra money right now. It doesn't make sense.
We got an update on Matheus Guendouzi, and apparently, according to our friends at the Daily Mail, he is garnering interest from Real Madrid and Barcelona.
Okay. The Barcelona stuff you got to take with a big grain of salt, because Barcelona is trying to balance their books. They are also trying to work out a deal to bring in some revenue for Arthur Melo. Looks like he's going to go to Juventus. He hasn't said yes to Juve yet. They're waiting. Could get something done the next couple of days. Part of the deal it's not just going to be straight cash, because Miralem Pjanic would come from Juve to Barca. But Swiss Ramble on Twitter has a good thread about it, about how on paper, on the books, both clubs would get about 60 million euro. It's all about what they paid for these players before, what they'd be booked for in this deal, all about trying to balance books and some tricky accounting. We're not going to nail all of it down, but that's why Barcelona would be getting a player. I mean, a 30-year-old player for a 23-year-old player, you look at that like, all right, what are you doing? You're trying to stay at least somewhat relevant on the field, but you're also trying to better your books, and you would be able to do that with this deal. I don't think that helps you get Lautaro Martinez, which is sounding less and less likely. I don't know if it helps you get anybody else. Like, I just don't think Barcelona's going to have the money to spend. These are the kind of deals they can do. They're going to have to move a player to bring in a player and take a loss on it. I mean, if it gives them 60 million euro on their books, yippee, you're trading a 23-year-old player for a 30-year-old player. Like, ultimately, you're going to lose out on that at some point. Maybe you hang on an extra year. And this is what we've talked about with Barcelona. It's been hang on. As long as you got Lionel Messi, hang on. But when he's gone, you're talking about a club that will be nowhere near where they've been, because they're just trying to hang on now, and they're mortgaging the future to do it.
Manchester City and Liverpool will be played at the Etihad and not a neutral venue on July 2nd. That came out this morning.
Yeah, they got the agreement for it, and that's good, I guess. It could be the title decider, depending on how things go. Pep Guardiola has to win at Chelsea today. If they don't win, if they draw or lose, then Liverpool wins the title. If they win, then it comes down to that game.
Yeah.
And there's still like 6 more. I mean, it's Liverpool's title, but it could get extended to where that game has extra meaning, and that would be fun. Games with meaning are fun. I like them. Hopefully we get them, but not a whole lot of meaning in that one.
Yeah. Newcastle update. It still remains in the hands of the Premier League as the government has told the MP they will not intervene in the Saudi-led buyout. Tell an MP.
Okay.
Letters seen by the Daily Mail. Trade Secretary Liz Truss has told Angus McNeil, chair of the International Trade Select Committee, that the £300 million deal is a matter for the Premier League.
Okay.
Truss stated that illegal satellite broadcasts of pirate operator Biautq have now ceased in Saudi Arabia, although they are aware of continued issues of infringement via the internet and are working to protect UK intellectual property.
They say that they've identified like 200-something issues of that. Saudi Arabia said that. They didn't before this, so, I mean, maybe that's changed, I guess, you would think, possibly, if they're trying to buy into this league and make more money, but, does it correct everything else? Probably not. BN's probably going to try to find a way out of their contract, and you're going to have to deal with that, and that's going to be fun for you to deal with. So just go take the other offer.
Mm-hmm.
But they're not going to do it because they're too far down the road, and this is just going to create so many problems.
Truss told McNeil that the takeover is, quote, a commercial matter for those parties and the Premier League. It is not for the government to intervene in the buying and selling of football clubs.
And it might not be, but the Premier League should say no to this. I don't think they're going to.
I'm trying to see the other stuff. Did you see that we talked about Barrow and getting into League Two for the first time in almost the upper divisions for the first time in a half century? Bolton Wanderers want Barrow's manager to be their new manager for the upcoming season.
Okay. Both would be in League Two next year.
Yes. Barrow is telling Bolton, you can have him, but for £250,000.
Yep.
So, even if Bolton was this serious, I'd love to know where they could come up with that kind of money if they're having so many problems making ends meet in the first place. I'd love to see them try to pull this off and where that money would come from if they're having problems making ends meet anyway.
Yeah, I mean, they probably wanted to get him, but they probably didn't want that invoice showing up for him.
They didn't want that price tag, no.
Yeah, it's probably going to be a little different.
Yep. Let's see. I've got a couple of other things in Scotland and one from the championship.
Okay.
Did you see at the Leeds United match that one of the cutouts was of Osama bin Laden?
Heard about it. Didn't see it, but heard about it. That's not good.
No. And apparently the guy whose cutout was next to Osama bin Laden when they had the camera shot noticed that he was next to Osama bin Laden, then pointed it out, and then that was when that cutout got removed.
Okay. Yeah, I wouldn't be very happy about my seat assignment.
No. Premier League clubs are discussing plans to open executive boxes for matches next season as a way to bring fans into the stadiums.
Okay. Yeah, I get it.
Likely no fans, and this is from our friend Sammy Mokbel at the Daily Mail. Testing events with government approval could take place at the end of this campaign and during the preseason. So several clubs with those with newer stadiums are looking at opening their hospitality areas in first entrance. A host of restrictions likely to be imposed. Club officials believe the opening of the boxes will allow them more control over the movement of spectators. Yeah. The nature of executive boxes means it's easier for clubs to adhere to social distancing.
Yeah, no, it definitely would. I mean, it makes complete logical sense. People would be angry about it.
Yes.
Because it looks like it's like, oh, well, you're only going to allow the rich people to come in. There is logic behind it's a box. It can be a household that can buy the box and be in the box, and it's safe, and you're socially distanced and all that. Like that, yeah, it absolutely makes sense. But who do you usually sell the boxes to? Who own the boxes? People with a whole lot of cash.
Mm-hmm.
So I get it. I don't know what else you can do about it. I mean, you've got problems. Bulgaria's tried to have people in the stands, and the prime minister now is threatening to ban that because nobody's following social distancing. The league resumed on June 5th. They had spectators allowed. Number of violations during matches. Boiko Borisov, who's the prime minister of Bulgaria, said, "We gave our players the opportunity to play in front of spectators. What did the fans do? They gathered together, not wearing protective face masks. What do they want to demonstrate?" So then the health minister issued an order on Monday allowing up to 1,000 spectators in a single stand, so bringing those numbers down a bit, urging fans to maintain distance. During the Bulgarian Cup semifinal second leg on Tuesday, Levski Sofia and Lokomotiv Plovdiv, nobody followed the rules. So that's going to be the other element here that's going to come into play. And this is what I think is so maddening about all of this to me. It's like I see it from all over the country. People, tweet 5,000 new cases in Florida. MLS can't play. Well, MLS didn't create the 5,000 new cases. MLS is creating a situation to avoid the 5,000 new cases and keep everybody safe. But no, they can't play. Okay, Bulgaria. They try to have fans back in the building. The fans aren't following the protocols to stay safe. So if you can't do it, then you can't have fans. And you don't have fans. Then you have no revenue. Then is it worth playing? Do you have the TV money to back it up? It's going to come up here when you start to have fans at venues, when you start to have situations. We're already seeing it at bars and restaurants and whatever. Like, you can't just say, oh, now we can go out. Cool. All's good. Because then you're going to have to dial it back. And that's where a lot of people are facing right now. But that's a different conversation than a closed event like NWSL and MLS and NBA are trying to do. It's all so complicated, but none of it, either it's getting back to normal, it's getting back to normal work, it's getting back to going to games, it's getting back to games, period. None of that happens if we can't just follow the basics of what we have to do to stay safe. We're seeing it across the board, whether it's Bulgaria, whether it's a beach in Florida. You take the shackles off and everybody's going nuts, and that's not going to help reduce the spread of this. So, we're not done yet. And that is going to affect how an MLS or anybody who is used to having, live events with large crowds, how they do business. If they can find a way to do it safe and show you that it's safe and have proven results that it's safe, they should be allowed to do that. They should be able to do that. But, yeah, it's all difficult right now, and there is no easy way out of any of this. I don't know. We'll have to see where it goes.
Updating stuff from the FIFA Women's World Cup. Apparently, Colombia has started their presentation to the FIFA Council as of about 12 minutes ago.
Yeah, it's going to be a while, then they'll vote. I mean, the presentations, pretty much everybody's already decided by this point, but they give a final presentation, and we see what happens. Reports Fabrizio Romano's updated on that Arthur move to Juventus. He's accepted it, according to Fabrizio Romano. Going to Juve. He goes to Juve. Pjanic and €10 million comes to Barcelona as part of the deal. So that's what it's looking like. We'll see. Anything else we have to hit before we go? Because it's a lot of stoppage time today.
A lot of stoppage time. One thing from Scotland today.
Mm-hmm.
Football's chiefs have lodged defenses to the £10 million action brought to Scotland's highest civil court by Hearts and Partick Thistle.
Nonsense.
Staff at the Court of Session have revealed that lawyers acting for the SPFL lodged papers at the Edinburgh court. Yeah, the two sides have decided to go to court, so they have officially lodged the papers over that. And they believe the decision taken by the football chiefs earlier this year was to the extreme detriment of the clubs involved. That's from Hearts and Partick Thistle.
Yeah.
And the £10 million number is still in play. They could also seek to interdict a halt to the start of the new Premiership season on August 1st, threatening the new TV deal with Sky Sports. A court official said representatives from Edinburgh-based law firm Shepherd and Wedderburn lodged the defenses. Officials stated that a hearing would be fixed for some time in the near future in order for the court to determine how the action should proceed.
In Scotland, today...
You're still being stupid!
No, they're not. But there's no news. That's the thing we have to understand here. Hearts and Partick Thistle are trying to block being relegated. Part of the reason they're trying to block being relegated, or part of the outcome to block it, is not the outcome I would have taken. And I guess they figure that they can't do this anymore because of the way the SPFL is not looking at increasing the size of the league or reconstructing the leagues. So part of the block of them being relegated is to block promotion. So the teams that are attempting as part of this suit that would not be promoted are fighting against it. Obviously, it makes sense. Those teams are going to be propped up by bigger teams who don't want Hearts to win their suit, don't want Partick Thistle to win their suit. So they're going to pay for like Cove Rangers and these other small teams to fight this. That's what happened today. There was basically a countersuit filed. That's no surprise. The Hearts thing, there's layers to it. We have to differentiate real quick. So they are trying not to be relegated, which would block promotion. People are going to fight that. If they are forced to be relegated, they are asking for £10 million to be split up between the teams that are getting relegated. It's not both. They're not asking for both. They're not saying, oh, we don't want to get relegated and you owe us money. No, it's not that. It is an if-then scenario. They want to not get relegated. If they can't fight that, then they want to be compensated for getting relegated, and they will try to, or at least they've left the possibility of stopping the season from starting until there's a resolution. That's a separate thing altogether. It's not just everything lumped in and sorted out. There's layers to it. It's nothing new. I mean, I saw this come through, and it's nothing new. It's the biggest thing out of it, honestly, is that, you know, like Partick Thistle wasn't going to be part of this because they don't have the money for a lawsuit, but somebody gave them money to go be part of the lawsuit. Mm-hmm. It's the same thing for these small teams that want to get promoted, obviously, and are going to fight not being promoted, which is one of the outcomes of the suit, and they didn't have the money to fight that. It looks like people are going to prop that up. Big clubs, probably look at Celtic and others that are going to throw money to these clubs to fight it. It's nothing new. It shouldn't be down to this point, as we said all along. It's not about don't relegate Hearts and don't promote these clubs that would be promoted in other divisions. It's not that. It's just don't relegate.
Yeah.
Don't relegate and reconstruct, but they fought reconstruction, every different possibility that was on the table. So this is what's left, and this is where you're at. And Hearts is not going to, go away quietly. And I get it. They shouldn't, but I don't. This is not the best way. This was never the best way to block the promotion of teams who somewhat earned it. They didn't earn it all the way through a whole season, but they earned being in that spot. They shouldn't be blocked. You just shouldn't relegate the teams that are getting relegated because they didn't get a chance to save themselves.
I totally agree. The Secretary General is now presenting the bid evaluation report to the FIFA Council. So that's where we are.
Yeah, we won't get anything anytime soon. So stay tuned. We'll keep you posted. We'll break all of it down tomorrow and get into the details of it and how it all shook out, because the vote will be one thing. The next part's what's going to be important is the why and the how, and how did this all fall. There will be plenty of people talking about it, so be ready for that tomorrow. More updates with teams going into the bubble, getting ready to go into the bubble in MLS. More NWSL updates. We'll get ready for the Challenge Cup to start this weekend. Lots of stuff to talk about in the morning. So thanks for hanging out with us for an extra long show today. And we'll be back for probably an extra long show in the morning. So we'll talk to you then. Mucho platiel.
Mucho platiel.